Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. We're a Minnesota sports podcast, so if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you're a Timberwolves fan, give this video a like because the Minnesota Timberwolves are up 1-0 on the Grizz. They got game 2 coming up here on Tuesday in Memphis, and I mean, just a super impressive performance overall. We haven't done a podcast since the Wolves won on Saturday, but I mean, obviously just a fantastic showing by Ant. I mean, he's just been phenomenal in both the play-in game and his first playoff game. No signs that the pressure's getting to him whatsoever. Cat had a great bounce-back game after just being a disaster against the Clippers. Comes back as his normal Cat self, dominating the Grizzlies, dominating Steven Adams, who just simply can't defend him. And, D'Lo struggled a little bit, but that's okay because he was picked up by Malik Beasley and Jaden McDaniels, who had great games. And, of course, Patrick Beverley was just being Patrick Beverley. So, obviously, super impressive win. I thought it was crucial to steal one of these games in Memphis. Now they have an opportunity to possibly steal both of them right off the bat and then come home for games 3 and 4. So, what are your initial thoughts here, Liberta, just on how impressive that victory was?
Yeah, like you said, we're kind of playing with house money now since we won game 1. Like, if you win game 2, then you feel really good about our chances to win the series because then if you could stack a couple home wins, you can make quick work of the Grizzlies here, which is in a completely unexpected fashion coming into it. So I think that would be very exciting. But again, if we lose, like, it's not the end of the world. Probably as long as we don't just look totally discombobulated and like a disaster all of a sudden overnight.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think that would happen, but I guess you never know. But I got to say, yeah, this game 1 win was very impressive. I think you saw all you'd want to see out of this team and in the opener of the playoffs. I think they did what made them successful throughout the season, and that's really playing at their pace, and that's the fastest in the NBA, really. I mean, we averaged almost points per game this year and showed a lot of that in this first game, scoring 130. I mean, we were all over the place. We scored 41 in that first quarter, especially. Got off to a fast start, and I think that was critical, especially to get Cat back in his groove. I think for him, you kind of got to get him going early so then he doesn't get in his own head and then trying to look for foul calls a little bit too much just to get himself going, I guess. So I would say that was probably the most important thing. I quite frankly was pretty scared Cat was going to be a no-show again, and it would just be one of those things where we start to question, like, does he rise up to the occasion in the biggest moments when we absolutely have to have a good performance from him? So that's very reassuring that he came to play, and then Ant stacking another vintage performance on top of that play-in game against the Clippers, comes back and scores 36 in game 1, and he looks like he's a budding superstar now. And it's not only the Minnesota people that have been following this team all year long, and they've been pretty excited about him, but now I feel like the national media is taking recognition of the fact of how special Ant could be, and the potential is just sky high. I mean, heard on the Bill Simmons podcast today, he's really intrigued by what Ant could be. And I mean, they were throwing around names, like they weren't directly comparing him, obviously, but like take it with a grain of salt. They're talking about how special it is. Like, for instance, they talk about LeBron and talk about his 07 run with the Cavs when he kind of first came on the scene as far as playoff success goes, and taking a bad Cavs team all the way to the finals where they end up losing to the Spurs, but still carried them. And it kind of makes you think, like, could Ant do something similar to that? Obviously, we're not going to directly compare him to LeBron or something, but still, I mean, it's interesting to have these conversations. And finally, Ant is really getting his recognition that has been so – it's very well deserved, I would say. Just after the first 2 seasons he's put together here, I think this is the beginning of something special. So I'm super excited to see what's in store for the rest of the series and the rest of the playoffs, however long it might last for us.
I think it's honestly fair to compare him, not saying he's as good as LeBron or Kobe, but I think I think the comparisons are fair just based on how he plays, what his mentality is. He's even got like a lighter personality than like LeBron. Like LeBron, he's kind of a complainer. He gets upset at teammates, stuff like that. We haven't seen any of that out of Ant yet. Granted, he's only 20 years old. Kobe was kind of like that too. He just had that killer mentality, like no fun, no messing around. Like, I'm just here to win.
Exactly.
So personality-wise, I guess Ant's a little different. But in terms of just like, not letting the pressure get to him, just playing free, driving to the basket, but also having a jump shot. And he's even become a better creator for other people too. He'll drive the lane, he'll dish it out to an open guy. I mean, he's the exact prototype of a player you want as your primary scoring option or your superstar on your team. You want that wing player that can cut to the hoop, can hit threes, can basically score from anywhere on the floor, but can also pass, can rebound, can play defense. His defense is phenomenal now. He was locking up John Morant on a few possessions there. So, like, I mean, he's just been phenomenal. He's an all-around player, and yeah, he's just got everything you want. He's got the moxie, he's got the swag, he's got the skill, he's got the confidence. I mean, it's just everything. He's the complete total package, and I can't emphasize this enough. He's only 20 years old. Like, I mean, it's insane how lucky the Timberwolves got here, picking him number 1 overall in a draft that didn't have a consensus number 1 overall pick. Nobody really knew if any of these players would turn out to be, superstars by any means. And I would say Ant and LaMelo are definitely on that track. I think Ant's better than LaMelo, but then you got James Wiseman sandwiched in between them there. It was kind of looking like a bust right now for the Warriors. But yeah, Ant's just a phenomenal player. And like you said, getting Cat back on his game too is just massive, because if he would have had another stinker, I could have seen that lingering around for this entire series. And I'm sure Memphis is going to make some adjustments here for game 2, maybe try to get him in more foul trouble, upset him, all that sort of stuff too. But even if Cat has a bad game, it could turn out like the Clipper game and D'Lo shows up and it doesn't matter, So that's the beauty of having a big 3, is that if 2 of the 3 show up, you're usually going to be in a pretty good position. So Memphis has a good roster, but the Wolves, I mean, I would say John Morant is the best player in this series, but 2 through 4, I think, belong to the Wolves with Ant, Cat, and D'Lo. So it's very impressive. And these are 2 teams that they're very similar. They're both young and experienced, have star players, and it's fantastic. I mean, I hope the Wolves sweep them in 4. They probably won't. And I wouldn't be upset if it goes 7, just because of how fun the series is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Ant real quick and kind of his evolution, the guy coming in was already a borderline 3-level scorer because he could hit 3-point shots, and now he's starting to hit that on a more consistent basis. You saw it the other day against the Grizzlies. I think he had 4 or 5 threes, I want to say. And then you saw him hit some really tough fadeaway jumpers in the mid-range. And then obviously it's unquestioned his ability to drive to the basket and get buckets there. I mean, he can throw down all the highlight reel dunks he wants. So, like, the scoring is no issue. Like you said, now his court vision's phenomenal. I think he's finding guys in good spots, and that's definitely become a larger part of his game now than it ever has been. And then his rebounding, being in the right place, right time, and then defensively when he locks in, like this guy can play with anybody just because he's got such a unique stature that he like he said on NBA Today, it was just that he can play with the small forwards, shooting guards, point guards, whatever. I mean, you throw him on there and he's focused, like he can borderline shut them down. So I think you're seeing the beginning of something that's hopefully going to be around here for a long time and bring perennial playoff success for this Wolves team and maybe a championship one day. I don't know. I'd love to see a playoff run this year for as far as we can get. I mean, at this point, we're borderline, I would say, playing with house money, just because I think this is probably the spot at the beginning of the season. If you had a goal in mind, is probably get in the playoffs and get in the series and make it competitive. Like, that was probably the goal. So now it's like you can kind of play loose, because if we lose, you don't really have anything to lose, is what I'm trying to say. So maybe we can play with that energy where it's like the Memphis Grizzlies, all the pressure's on them to win this series because they come into the playoffs with the second best record in the NBA this season. And they already kind of had their building geared last year where they kind of got their feet wet. And now it's like go time. So the Wolves can kind of do whatever, play loose, and just see what happens. So I think that's another exciting thing. But kind of building off our big 3, I know we talked a lot about the Stars, and deservedly so. That's what won us the game the other night. He had Cat dropping 29, Ant had 36. But then I think it goes to show, too, like how important our top rotation players are off the bench, from Beasley to TP and Daniels. Like, they play an instrumental role in this team winning games, and I think that they're just as important, I would say, as our starting 5 as a collective, just because I think they provide some valuable minutes when you absolutely need to have it, because you can't play 5 starters, obviously, 48 minutes. So guys like Beasley coming in and chipping in 23, that's massive. So if you can see more of that, I really like our chances to win the series overall.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you got to remember, too, like, McDaniels is, 20 years old? He's the same age as Edwards.
Exactly, same draft class,
Yeah, I think Malik Beasley's only, 23 years old, even though he's been in the league a few years. Like, I mean, these guys are all gaining massive experience. Cat and D'Lo have both been in the playoffs before, but for very short-lived experiences. So everybody's kind of learning, and Pat Bev's kind of, the one showing them the ropes and telling them this is what we got to do. And obviously Chris Finch has just been phenomenal. I'll keep standing on the table for that guy. I really do think he should be the NBA Coach of the Year, just with the complete turnaround this franchise has had. But I also understand why he's not a finalist, just because they basically pick coaches that have some of the best records in the league. Yeah. So that makes sense. But yeah, it's crazy, man. You're talking about expectations going into the season, and I think truly, I mean, maybe we probably did an episode what our expectations were, but I probably would have said, try to get in the top 8, but for sure get in the play-in and then go from there.
Exactly.
But now, I mean, we got the 7 seed. We won a tough play-in game against a Clippers team that was pretty much healthy, minus Kawhi. You get a draw against the 2 seed Memphis Grizzlies, who are just a young, fun, one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, and you steal game 1 in their home arena. Like, this team is just far exceeding expectations, and by no means is the job done. I want them to go on a little run here, but Absolutely. I mean, this year is already just a massive W in my book, and it's easily something they can build off of.
Yeah, it's a big success, and I think I want to see just as much playoff Ant as possible, because this is invaluable experience. The more games you play, the better off you're going to be down the road, like in future seasons. So as many games as we can play as possible, and especially if you can win a series, like I think that would be huge for the confidence of this team, both in the present and the future, as far as like what we're building here and that it can work. So I would like to see us, like you said, at least push a series to 6-7 games, and hopefully you got to think, if we're playing as good at home as we have all season, I would say we should be favored to win the series at this point, but maybe that's stretching it just a little bit since we're only a game in, can't overreact too much, but still, like, we were a good home court team this year. So I'm hoping that that trend continues, and especially, like, I would love to lock it up if we can somehow steal game 2 in Memphis. Then those home games are ever more important there. So, and not letting the series linger. But again, I don't want to get ahead of myself too much here. I kind of just got to pump the brakes. The Grizzlies are a 56-win team for a reason. And like you said, they're going to make adjustments. So we got to be ready for that. And I know that could be something that could be hard to adjust to on the fly in the middle of the game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like, I think obviously if they win game 2, I'm going to feel incredible. Like, I'm going to love our chances for this series. But even if they play just a tight, close game and they do lose in game 2, I'll feel pretty good as well. I could see the Timberwolves going into this game with a lot of confidence, maybe getting ahead of their skis a little bit, and maybe Memphis takes advantage of that and wins by 10 or 15,
Might get a humbling loss.
Yeah, exactly. But if the Wolves really can just lock in and focus and keep this one close and maybe even win it, I mean, then you're going home with a 2-0 lead, just an insane amount of pressure on Memphis. Got that ruckus Target Center crowd. Like, I don't know, man. I would love our chances at that point. But quickly before we wrap up here, I mean, we've already kind of discussed it, but do you think this Timberwolves team is capable of making a playoff run, or do you think it's a little too early? And I guess a playoff run can be loosely defined, I guess, by how far they go maybe, but can you at least see the potential there for this team to make a run? Maybe not even necessarily this year, but I mean, maybe right away next year even.
Yeah, I think they're plenty capable for sure. I think it's just stacking performances on top of one another, just finding some kind of consistency. I know that's definitely a hallmark of a young team, is inconsistency and not bringing the same performance every night. And like, we come out and look great in game 1, albeit we're a turnover machine. I mean, right and left, especially in that second quarter, that was awful. But outside of that, and then a little bit of foul trouble, some you can control, some you can't. But I think you saw all the makings of what this team can be, especially when D'Lo plays a little bit better. Like, it takes you to even new heights. So I would say I feel really good about the possibilities here, whether that be this year, next year, whatever. I think that there's a real chance. Yeah, again, finding some consistency, playing your best brand of basketball more often than you don't, and continuing to build on this star potential that he has, because he can be an X factor that takes his team over the top. Because D'Lo and Cat are solid players, don't get me wrong. I think they're stars in this league. Cat definitely like a top 20 player, but at the same time, I think Ant's what's going to be the deciding factor in like these huge games, and when the lights are on and all the stakes are on the line. I think it comes down to Ant. So if like he performs, it keeps getting better. Like, I think that's what's going to take us deeper and deeper into the playoffs.
I agree. I mean, Cat is the best player on this team currently, but it's not going to last very long. And Ant is definitely the X factor that's just going to drive this thing, because when he performs like he has these last 2 games, they're a really, really hard team to beat, just given what all the other pieces are.
Absolutely. And I think Cat can be a perfect beta too.
Oh yeah,
I think that's what really helps here too, is as this evolution continues, like it's not gonna hinder your team's performance or success or hopefully mentality at all, just because I think Cat can kind of defer to Ant and still play his own game and step up when he needs to. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that's what's really good here too, is we have the perfect blend of personalities, it feels like.
I just think in the modern NBA, it's tough to have the center be your alpha and be your best
Yeah,
player that
true.
everything circles around. Where
Outside
the
of the Jokic's and Embiid's, but again, they
yeah,
haven't won any championships. So I mean
right,
that's still to be determined. But
exactly. So that'll do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please give this video a like and hit the subscribe button on our channel. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram and let us know your thoughts below. Do you think this Timberwolves team is capable of making a run? What have you liked that you've seen out of them so far? And just your overall thoughts on this playoff series and where it's going. So until next time, thanks for watching.